Natalie Pierce smoothed down her navy dress for the third time, her fingers trembling slightly as the taxi wound through the city's affluent district. Streetlights reflected off rain-slicked pavements, each passing block filled with restaurants she could never afford on a teacher's salary. Owen squeezed her hand gently, his warm smile doing little to calm the butterflies rioting in her stomach. "They're going to love you," he whispered, though something flickering in his eyes suggested he didn't quite believe his own words. She'd been dating Owen Hartley for 2 months now, ever since he'd walked into her elementary school's art exhibition and spent an hour genuinely admiring her students' finger paintings. Most people glanced and moved on, but Owen had asked questions, remembered names, and even bought 3 pieces to hang in his apartment. He was different from anyone she'd ever met, thoughtful in ways that seemed almost old-fashioned. The kind of man who still opened doors and actually listened when she spoke about her day. The restaurant appeared. Before them, like something from a magazine spread, all crystal chandeliers and marble columns. A doorman in pristine white gloves ushered them inside, where a hostess with a practiced smile led them through a maze of tables draped in cream linen. Natalie felt acutely aware of her thrift store dress, beautiful but clearly not designer. Among the sea of obvious wealth surrounding them, Owen's family was already seated at a corner table with a view of the city. His mother, Claudia Hartley, looked exactly like her voice had sounded over the phone, sharp, polished, and slightly impatient. Her silver hair was pulled into an elegant twist, and her charcoal suit probably cost more than Natalie's monthly rent. Richard Hartley barely glanced up from his phone, offering only a distracted handshake. Owen's sister Sienna appraised Natalie with cool gray eyes, her expression revealing nothing. "Must be the teacher," Claudia said, making the profession sound vaguely apologetic. "How quaint. Owen mentioned you work with children." "I teach art to 3rd graders," Natalie replied, sitting down and trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "It's incredibly rewarding." "I'm sure it keeps you busy," Sienna added, her tone suggesting busy was not the same as successful. "Though I can't imagine the salary is anything to write home about." Owen shifted uncomfortably, his shoulders hunching slightly in a way Natalie had never seen before. Natalie's students adore her. She's created an amazing program that integrates art with other subjects. "How creative," Claudia said, the words sounding like a criticism. She turned her attention to a young server approaching their table, a girl who couldn't have been more than 20 with nervous hands and hopeful eyes. "Finally. We've been waiting. I apologize for the delay, ma'am," the server said softly. "Can I start you with drinks?" Claudia waved dismissively. "We'll have the 2015 Bordeaux, and bring it properly chilled this time. Last week, the temperature was completely wrong." The server nodded, scribbling notes with shaking hands. As she turned to leave, she accidentally brushed against Claudia's designer handbag hanging on the chair. The bag tilted but didn't fall. "Careful," Claudia snapped, her voice cutting through nearby conversations. Several diners glanced over. "Do you have any idea how much this costs?" "Probably more than you make in 6 months. They really should train you people better." The girl's face flushed crimson. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." Claudia settled back in her chair. "The service here has really declined. Richard, we should consider switching to the Waverly for family dinners." Natalie watched Owen's jaw tighten, saw him open his mouth as if to say something, then close it again. His eyes found his plate. The transformation was startling. This wasn't the confident, funny man who'd spent last Saturday teaching her students how to code simple animations. This was someone smaller, quieter, almost invisible. "Owen tells us you met at a school event," Richard said, finally putting his phone away long enough to acknowledge the conversation. "I suppose that's appropriate given your respective stations." "Respective stations?" Natalie echoed, uncertain she'd heard correctly. "Well, you're both in service industries, after a fashion," Sienna explained with false sweetness. "Owen with his little software projects for that nonprofit, you with your teaching. It's nice when people find others at their level." "Actually," Owen started, his voice barely above a murmur, "the program I'm developing could really help." "We've been through this," Claudia interrupted. "That coding charity nonsense is a waste of your MIT education. If you'd just accept the position at your father's firm, you could make something of yourself." Natalie felt her throat tighten. Owen had told her about the software he was building, a free platform to teach coding to kids in underserved communities. He'd spent months developing it, working late nights after his day job, driven by a belief that every child deserved access to technology education. The passion in his voice when he described it had been beautiful to witness. "Owen is making something of himself," Natalie said quietly. "The work he's doing matters." Claudia's laugh was like ice cracking. "How sweet. You're defending him. Though I suppose teachers are accustomed to dealing with underachievers." The server returned with their wine, pouring with visible concentration. Claudia tasted it, made a show of considering, then nodded curtly. As the girl moved to fill Natalie's glass, her hand trembled slightly, and a single drop of wine splashed onto the pristine tablecloth. "Unbelievable," Claudia hissed. "This is exactly what I was talking about. Completely incompetent." Something inside Natalie snapped. She'd spent the entire evening watching these people diminish Owen, criticize everything from his career to his choices, treating him like a disappointing investment rather than a son. And now this girl, who was just trying to do her job, was being humiliated for a single drop of wine. "It's fine," Natalie said firmly, placing her hand over the tiny stain. "Completely unnoticeable." "I'll be the judge of what's noticeable," Claudia replied coolly. "Actually, you won't." Natalie set down her wine glass with more force than intended, the clink echoing in the sudden silence. "This young woman has been nothing but professional and courteous, despite being treated with astonishing rudeness. And that stain is barely visible, certainly not worth humiliating someone over." The table froze. Owen's eyes widened. Sienna's mouth fell open slightly. "I beg your pardon?" Claudia's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Natalie's heart hammered, but she pressed on. "I've sat here for an hour watching you belittle your son. Dismiss his accomplishments and treat service staff like they're beneath your notice. And I'm done pretending it's acceptable." "How dare you," Richard started. But Natalie was on her feet now, her hands steady, despite her racing pulse. "Owen is brilliant, kind, and doing work that actually matters in this world. He's teaching children skills that could change their lives. And if you can't see how extraordinary that is, how extraordinary he is, then I genuinely feel sorry for you." She turned to the server, whose eyes were glistening. "Thank you for your excellent service. You've been wonderful." Then, grabbing her coat, Natalie looked at Owen one final time. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between shock and something else she couldn't quite name. "I'll catch a cab," she said softly. "I'm sorry, but I can't stay here." The cool night air hit her face as she pushed through the restaurant doors, her legs carrying her away on pure adrenaline. She'd made it half a block before she heard footsteps running behind her. She turned to find Owen jogging toward her, his tie loosened, his face flushed in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. For a moment, they just stood there on the rain-damp sidewalk, city lights blurring around them. "I should apologize," they both said simultaneously. Owen shook his head. And then he smiled, a real smile, the first genuine one she'd seen from him all evening. "You were absolutely incredible in there. I embarrassed you in front of your family." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You defended me when no one else ever has, including myself." They walked through the quiet streets, the city's evening hum settling around them like a protective blanket. Owen's hand found hers, and for several blocks, neither spoke. Natalie's mind raced with questions, doubts, wondering if she'd just destroyed something precious by letting her anger take control. "I owe you an explanation," Owen finally said as they paused beneath a street lamp. "About why I just sat there. Why I let them talk to me like that." "You don't owe me anything," Natalie replied gently. "Family dynamics are complicated. No, I do." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as his nervous tell. "That version of me you saw tonight, that's who I've always been around them. Small, quiet, apologetic for existing. I've spent my entire life trying to earn their approval and never quite measuring up." They resumed walking, turning down a tree-lined street where autumn leaves scattered across the sidewalk. Owen's voice grew stronger as he spoke, as if each word was shedding weight he'd carried too long. My father wanted me to join his investment firm straight out of college. Prestigious, lucrative, soul-crushing. When I told them I wanted to use my computer science degree to create educational software, they laughed. Actually laughed like I'd told a joke. Natalie squeezed his hand. But you did it anyway, sort of. Owen's smile turned rueful. I took a job at a tech nonprofit to keep the peace, something they could barely tolerate. But the coding platform for kids, CodeBridge, that's what I work on every night and weekend. It's been my secret for 2 years now. They've reached a small park, empty, except for a few streetlights, casting pools of golden light. Owen led her to a bench overlooking a fountain, its gentle splash the only sound in their bubble of quiet. Why keep it secret? Natalie asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Because they'd find a way to ruin it. They always do. Owen's jaw tightened. 3 years ago, I tried to launch a different program, a free tutoring app. I was so proud of it, stupidly thought they'd be proud too. My mother called her lawyer friends, threatened intellectual property suits, claimed I was using family resources. It wasn't true, but the legal threats scared off my partners. The project died before it even launched. Natalie felt anger kindle again in her chest. That's horrible. That's when I learned to keep my dreams to myself. He turned to face her, his brown eyes reflecting the fountain's light. But then I met you, and you asked about my work with such genuine interest. You listened to my ideas without judgment. You made me remember what it felt like to share things with someone who actually cared. I do care, Natalie said softly. What you're building with CodeBridge, it's exactly what kids need. My students would benefit so much from learning coding in an accessible way. Owen's face brightened. Actually, we're almost ready to launch. I've been working with a small team of volunteers, other developers who believe in the mission. We've got the platform running, content for beginners through advanced levels, all completely free. We're planning to go live next month. Owen, that's incredible. Why didn't you tell me? He looked down at their joined hands. Because there's something else I haven't told you. Something that might change how you see me. Natalie's stomach tightened. Okay, my grandfather, my mother's father, he was nothing like the rest of them. He was a teacher, actually, spent 40 years in public schools. When he passed 5 years ago, he left me something. Owen paused, choosing his words carefully. A trust fund. A substantial one. He'd made some very smart investments over his lifetime, and he wanted to make sure I'd be independent from my parents' influence. How substantial are we talking? Natalie asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. Enough that I could fund CodeBridge entirely myself. Enough that I'll never have to worry about money. He met her eyes. Natalie, I'm what most people would consider wealthy. Very wealthy. The nonprofit job is real, but I don't need the salary. I live in a modest apartment and drive an old car because I don't want to be like them. Drowning in luxury while people struggle. Natalie processed this information. Watching the fountain's water catch the light. So when your mother made those comments about teaching salaries in service industries, she has no idea. My father manages a fraction of what I have, but he doesn't know that. I've kept it completely private. Owen's voice grew urgent. I didn't tell you before because I wanted you to know me first. Not my bank account, not my family name, just me. The guy who can't paint to save his life, but loves watching you teach. The guy who eats too much pizza and falls asleep during movies. Just Owen. A laugh escaped Natalie, despite the weight of the revelation. You do fall asleep during every movie. I have a condition, he protested with mock seriousness. It's called comfortable couch syndrome. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the reality settling between them. Natalie realized the money didn't change anything fundamental. Owen was still the man who'd spent his Saturday helping her student. Jamie built a birdhouse when Jamie's parents worked double shifts. Still the person who remembered that she liked her coffee with too much cream and brought her favorite pastries on rough mornings. I'm glad you told me, she finally said, but it doesn't change anything important. You're still the same person. Owen's shoulders relaxed visibly. I was terrified you'd see me differently. I do see you differently, Natalie admitted, and when his face fell, she quickly continued. I see someone who's been fighting to be himself against impossible pressure. Someone who's chosen purpose over prestige. That makes me respect you even more." He pulled her closer, and she rested her head against his shoulder. "What you did tonight, standing up to my family, no one's ever done that for me. I've spent so long letting them define who I should be that I forgot I could choose differently. So what do you want to choose?" Natalie asked. Owen was quiet for a long moment, the fountain's rhythm filling the space. When he spoke, his voice was steady with newfound conviction. "I want to launch Codebridge properly, not hiding in the shadows. I want to use my resources to make real change, not let them sit unused because I'm afraid of looking like them. And I want to be with someone who sees past all the surface stuff to who I actually am." "That sounds like a good plan," Natalie said. Smiling against his shoulder, "There's one more thing." Owen shifted so he could look at her. "Tomorrow morning, I'm calling my parents. I'm going to tell them about Codebridge, about my plans to expand it. And I'm going to make it clear that if they want to be part of my life, they need to treat both of us with respect. No more belittling, no more control, are you sure?" Natalie knew what that conversation would cost him. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your family. You're not the reason. You're the catalyst. There's a difference." Took both her hands in his. "I've been slowly disappearing around them for years, becoming less and less myself. Tonight, watching you defend that server, defend me, I realized I've been complicit in my own erasure. That stops now." They walked the remaining blocks to Natalie's apartment building, converted brownstone with creaky stairs and temperamental heating. Owen had never commented on the peeling paint or the fact that her entire place could fit inside his parents' dining room. That, Natalie realized, said more about his character than any grand gesture could. At her door, she turned to face him. "Whatever happens with your family, whatever you decide to do with Codebridge, I'm here. Not because of money or status or any of that. Because you're kind and brilliant, and you make me laugh." Owen kissed her then, soft and grateful, his hand gentle against her cheek. "I love you, Natalie Pierce. I think I have since you explained why finger painting is actually a legitimate art form." "I love you too," she whispered. "Even though you fall asleep during movies, it's a medical condition," he insisted. And they both laughed. As Natalie watched him walk back down the stairs, she felt something shift in the evening air. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and uncertain futures. But tonight, standing in the doorway of her modest apartment, she felt richer than she'd ever imagined possible. Because real wealth, she was learning, had nothing to do with money. It was found in quiet courage, in choosing authenticity over approval, in building something meaningful rather than impressive. It was found in the way Owen looked at her, like she was the most valuable thing in his world. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than all the Bordeaux and designer handbags in the city. The morning after the restaurant disaster, Natalie woke to find 3 missed calls from Owen and a text that made her smile. Did it feel terrified and free simultaneously? Coffee later? When they met at their usual cafe, tiny place with mismatched furniture and the best cinnamon rolls in the neighborhood, Owen looked different. His shoulders were back, his smile unguarded. He ordered their drinks and immediately launched into his story. "I called them at 8 this morning," he said, breaking off a piece of cinnamon roll and handing it to her, a ritual they'd developed. "Told my mother I needed to speak with both of them. She tried to lecture me about last night, about how embarrassing it was, how I needed to control my girlfriend better." Natalie winced at the phrasing, but Owen just shook his head, grinning. "I told her Natalie didn't need controlling, that she was absolutely right, and that their behavior was unacceptable. You should have heard the silence, Natalie. I don't think I've ever spoken to my mother like that in my entire life." "How did she react?" "Threatened to cut me off, as usual. That's when I told them about the trust fund, about Codebridge, about everything." Owen's eyes sparkled with something like mischief. "My father actually sputtered. Actual sputtering. He demanded to know the amount, claimed I must be exaggerating. When I told him the truth, there was this long pause, and then he said I was being irresponsible with my inheritance. 'But it's your money,' Natalie protested. Exactly what I said. I told them I was launching Codebridge next month, that I'd be stepping away from any expectations they had for my career. and that if they wanted a relationship with me, it would be on my terms. With respect for my choices and for the people in my life. Natalie reached across the table, squeezing his hand. I'm so proud of you. I'm terrified, Owen admitted. But also, I haven't felt this light in years. The following weeks unfolded like watching someone come into focus. Owen threw himself into CodeBridge's launch preparations with an energy Natalie had never witnessed. He introduced her to his team, a passionate group of developers, educators, and designers who'd been working with him in secret. They gathered in Owen's apartment, which turned out to be much larger than Natalie had realized, transforming his living room into a makeshift office filled with whiteboards and laptop stations. This is brilliant, Natalie said. Navigating through the beta version of CodeBridge on Owen's computer, the interface was colorful and intuitive, with animated characters guiding students through coding concepts. My kids would love this. Would you test it with them? Owen asked hopefully. We need feedback from actual classrooms before launch. Natalie did better than test it. She integrated CodeBridge into her curriculum, watching her third graders light up as they learned to create simple animations and games. 8-year-old Timothy, who struggled with traditional academics, built an entire interactive story about dinosaurs. Quiet Priya coded a math quiz game that other students actually wanted to play. The results were so impressive that Natalie documented everything, taking videos and collecting student feedback. Owen used these testimonials in his launch presentation, showing real kids from real classrooms discovering the joy of coding. CodeBridge launched on a Tuesday morning in October. Owen had refused to make it a big event, instead opting for a simple website going live and social media posts from education advocates they'd partnered with. By noon, they had 5,000 users. By the end of the week, 50,000. Teachers from across the country were signing up, praising the platform's accessibility and quality. It's working, Owen whispered to Natalie that Friday night, staring at his laptop screen in disbelief. It's actually working. The success brought attention, including a feature in Educational Technology magazine and interest from school districts wanting to partner with them. Owen navigated it all with growing confidence. The uncertain man from that restaurant dinner nowhere to be found, but success also brought his family back into the picture. Sienna called first, her voice stiff. I saw the article about your platform. It's getting impressive coverage. Thank you, Owen replied carefully. Mother and father wanted me to reach out. They're interested in discussing investment opportunities. Owen looked at Natalie, who was grading papers at his kitchen table. She gave him an encouraging nod. I don't need investors, Sienna. CodeBridge is fully funded. Yes, well, his sister paused. They also wanted to extend an invitation to dinner. A proper one this time. They'd like to meet Natalie again, start fresh. Why the change of heart? Owen asked bluntly. Another pause. Because your platform is legitimate. Because you're being featured in major publications. Because they were wrong about you. Owen felt anger flare. So now that I'm successful by their standards, I'm worth their time? I know how it sounds, Sienna said quietly. But isn't a relationship with them, even an imperfect one, better than nothing? After he hung up, Natalie set down her red pen. What do you want to do? Owen paced his apartment, thinking, part of me wants to tell them to forget it. They only care now because CodeBridge is getting recognition, not because they realize they were wrong. But the other part remembers my grandfather, who was nothing like them, who believed in teaching and making a difference. He'd probably say that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean leaving the door open. They decided to accept the dinner invitation, but on their terms. Not at some exclusive restaurant, but at Owen's apartment. Casual, comfortable, honest. The evening was strained, but civil. Claudia complimented Natalie's dress without barbed undertones. Richard actually put his phone away and asked Owen genuine questions about CodeBridge's development. Sienna brought wine and apologized, briefly but sincerely, for her previous comments. It wasn't perfect. Claudia still made a few passive-aggressive remarks about Owen's unconventional choices. Richard suggested that with proper business management, CodeBridge could be monetized more effectively. But when these comments arose, Owen calmly redirected or simply disagreed. And Natalie watched his family slowly realize that their old tactics no longer worked. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Near the end of the evening, Claudia was examining the testimonials displayed on Owen's wall. Messages from teachers and parents whose children had discovered coding through CodeBridge. "This one is heartbreaking," she said softly, reading a note from a single mother whose son had been labeled as having learning disabilities but had excelled with CodeBridge's approach. "You're actually changing lives." "That's the point," Mother Owen replied. "Not profit margins or prestige. Impact." For the first time, Claudia looked at her son with something approaching respect. "Your grandfather would be proud. I wish I'd understood that sooner." It wasn't a complete transformation. The Hartleys were still difficult, still occasionally critical, still viewing the world through their lens of status and achievement. But it was a beginning, a crack in the facade that suggested healing might be possible. 2 months after the launch, CodeBridge received its first major donation from an unexpected source. Victoria Chen, a retired tech CEO, had been following their progress and wanted to fund expansion into underserved communities. Owen used the money to hire staff, develop more content, and partner with schools that lacked technology resources. One afternoon, as Owen and Natalie visited a community center in a low-income neighborhood where CodeBridge was being introduced, a 14-year-old girl approached them. Her name was Jordan, and she'd been using the platform for 6 weeks. "I built this," she said shyly, showing them a game on a borrowed laptop. It was simple but functional, a puzzle game with hand-drawn graphics. "I want to study computer science in college, but my school doesn't offer programming classes. CodeBridge is the only reason I know any of this." Owen's voice was thick when he spoke. "This is amazing, Jordan. Keep building, keep learning. If you need recommendation letters for college applications, let me know." Walking back to the car, Natalie saw tears in Owen's eyes. "You okay?" "Better than okay," he said. "That moment right there, that's why we did all of this. Jordan's going to change the world someday, and we helped give her the tools." That night, lying in bed with Natalie's head on his chest, Owen spoke into the darkness. "I spent so much of my life chasing my parents' approval, trying to be who they wanted. I thought that was what success looked like, making them proud. And now?" Natalie asked. "Now I know that real success is Jordan's face when she showed us that game. It's Timothy building dinosaur animations in your classroom. It's knowing that somewhere tonight, a kid who thinks they're not smart enough is discovering they can code." Natalie pressed a kiss to his shoulder. "Your grandfather knew what he was doing when he gave you that trust fund." "He gave me freedom," Owen agreed. "But you gave me courage. I don't think I could have stood up to my family without seeing you do it first." "We gave each other courage," Natalie corrected. "You inspired me too. Watching you pour everything into CodeBridge, seeing you choose purpose over prestige, it made me want to be braver in my own teaching." She'd recently proposed an innovative arts integration program at her school, something she would have been too intimidated to suggest before. The principal had approved it enthusiastically, and now Natalie was helping other teachers incorporate creative elements into their standard curriculum. As autumn turned to winter, their lives fell into a rhythm of meaningful work and quiet happiness. Owen's relationship with his family remained complicated but improved, built on mutual respect rather than obligation. CodeBridge continued to grow, reaching more students every day. And through it all, Owen and Natalie built something together, a partnership rooted in shared values and genuine affection. One snowy December evening, Owen brought Natalie to the community center where they'd met Jordan. The lights were off, which seemed strange until Owen unlocked the door and flipped the switch. The room was filled with students, teachers and parents, all people whose lives had been touched by CodeBridge. A banner read, "Thank you, Owen and Natalie," in multicolored letters clearly designed by children. "Wanted to show you what you've built." Jordan said, now serving as a teaching assistant for younger students, "CodeBridge isn't just a platform. It's a community." Students demonstrated projects they'd created. Parents shared stories of children who'd found confidence through coding. Teachers talked about transformed classrooms. Through it all, Owen held Natalie's hand. Overwhelmed by the impact of choosing courage over comfort, later, As they drove home through falling snow, Natalie said, "Remember that awful dinner? How could I forget? I've been thinking about it. If your family had been kind from the start, if there'd been no conflict, would we be here now? Would you have found the strength to launch Codebridge on your terms?" Owen considered this. Probably not. I would have kept compromising, kept making myself smaller to fit their expectations. That dinner was horrible, but it was also a catalyst.
Ow.
Sometimes, Natalie said thoughtfully, the worst moments lead to the best changes, spoken like a true teacher. Owen teased, and they drove on through the winter night, heading toward a future they were building together, one brave choice at a time.